rather lame to have your first blind date, have the girl come pick you up at work.
Sure.
But I did. And the first thing I said to her, I was wearing light wash jeans and I don't know, like a turd. And I opened the door up and I said, "What you see is what you get." And that and that was, she was like, "Okay, here we go."
Welcome to Processing Purpose, a business and lifestyle podcast committed to having honest conversations about the stuff in our lives that is often suppressed, ignored, or overlooked. We are two brothers from very different backgrounds, but with one common goal. From entrepreneurship to relationships, from hobbies to house projects, nothing is off limits as we process becoming the best version of ourselves in business and life. Again, down with the noises.
Yeah.
That's a great way to lead into a podcast.
And
We're back.
we're back. We're here. We're doing it. And we quickly decided what we're going to talk about today, but I'm really looking forward to it. I think this is something we talk about. Certainly, we talk about this topic a lot between one another, but it's going to be really fun to just unpack
Yeah.
the greatest loves of our life.
Yeah. I love the opportunity to go down this route of talking about our spouses.
Yep.
And it should be a fun conversation. I do want to start though with a deviation from our usual. Our
Yes.
usual is, man, it's good to be back with you. We haven't been together in a long time, and it's been fun to catch up. And we actually recorded 2 days ago.
Yeah, we've been and we talked yesterday. So yeah.
We got a full couple months coming up though, so we're trying to jam in a few episodes here to kind of front load the system so that we can keep on the schedule. Because this will probably come out. Well, it's Labor Day weekend right now. This will probably come out end of September. Is when this one will come out. So
And I would assume most of you are probably dealing with a lot of fall rhythm, getting back into the swing of things, and that's kind of what we're up against. But we want to make sure that we're staying on track and staying in rhythm and all that too. So
yeah,
a little different start because we definitely have caught up in a while.
yeah,
in the last
absolutely.
while.
But being in the month of September, Holly and I celebrate at the end of September 19 years
That's awesome.
of marriage.
You're almost into the 20s.
19 years of marriage. That'll make almost 22 years of being together.
How does that resonate when you say that out loud? Is it a little bit unbelievable?
It is. It's like, am I really that old? Combined with, wow, that's impressive, and some pride along with it too.
Absolutely.
Because those weren't 19 or 22 easy years.
Yeah.
Sure, some of them are easy and fun, and the earlier ones
Right.
are always easier. But there were some tough ones in there for sure. And
there may be some tough ones coming down the line too. I think it's okay to see it that way, and not to say it's going to be painstaking, but there are going to be challenges. It's just life, and the beauty is that I think, in my opinion, the coolest part about getting miles in with your spouse is you're stronger, right?
Yeah.
You're stronger. You're hopefully more wise. You're able to be hopefully more patient, right, with each other.
I know I'm a better version of myself.
Yeah, and she would argue she is too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, where do you want to go with this?
I know we could go a lot of different directions, but I think let's open it up. First and foremost, I think some of you guys know our spouses are sisters.
Yeah.
So there's that.
That's why we.
Yep. And we decided let's talk about them and let's honor them. I think, and for me, anyways, I know that's your intention as well. But I just yeah. So I know we're gonna put them on blast today. I can't wait to honor her. I love bragging about my wife. We've really married up. You're a wonderful man, but you've really married up. I'm a wonderful man, but I've really married up. And I'm a better man. I'm a better person because of it. No doubt about it.
One thing that I really genuinely appreciate about the way you talk about Brooke is it's always edifying. Like, and you're consistent with it, and it's often. And I really appreciate it, and I notice it. Like, you do a great job, whether that's in our friend groups or out having beers or whatever it might be. Anytime you have an opportunity to like slide in a praise of Brooke, you do it. And It's something I aspire to. I don't do it like you do, and it's not because my wife's not worth it. It doesn't cross my mind like that.
Sure.
But you do a great job of that. You
Oh,
really
thanks,
do.
man. I hope that if I leave a legacy on the earth, I hope that I lifted people up. That's what I want to be about. And
Yeah.
if that's true, then I'm one happy, satisfied man. But as your wife does as well, they just deserve it. They just work their freaking butts off. And I know there's a lot of hard workers out there. I promise you, just don't work as hard as Holly and Brooke. You don't. They work twice as hard as we do. Maybe even more so. I tell people all the time, like I'm a really hard worker, and she makes me feel ultra lazy.
And I think that comes back. You just mentioned legacy.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a function, and I know you would agree because we've talked about it. That's a function of the Reedy, their maiden name, the Reedy family legacy. Like,
Right.
grinding is what their dad Duffy did.
And Susie, for that matter. If you really look at Susie's workflow throughout the day, like
Yeah, I don't mean to minimize Susie.
no, and I don't think you did at
Yeah.
all. But yeah, they're just go getters. They go. It's do the next thing. It's
And if it's not work, it's service.
totally
Like, it's
to the point of him passing out every night, like quite literally. You call it or narcolepsy if you want.
Sure.
But remember how
he would
many
fall
times
asleep sitting at the couch in a conversation with you.
halfway through a sentence.
Yeah.
and you're like, are you still?
And he's like, "Oh no, I'm just resting my eyes."
But he really wanted
It's
to
'cause
take
he
that
just
time.
poured it all out.
So tired. And I try to remind her and others that do that on a regular basis. You've got to fill your cup. You've got to find ways to fill yourself up.
Yeah.
Because they won't. They'll. Well, Brooke's getting. I think she's getting a lot better at recognizing. All right, I need my juice too. But there was a long stretch there, and I think it was just the season of life we were in with our young kids. But it was just nope. There was no excuses. No, I would be moaning and whining in the background. She would just be getting after it.
Yeah, almost to a fault.
Yeah, I'd say so too. Yeah, like they don't know how to turn the off button off sometimes.
They have two speeds:
Yeah,
max and asleep.
yeah, they're two very, very impressive women when it comes to work ethic. It's unbelievable, and it's certainly going to translate to our children. And that's the hope, is that they become hard workers. Tell me you guys a story.
Yeah.
Like I know a little, I know most of it, but tell the viewers.
Yeah,
what's your story?
and there's a long story version, there's a short story version, and this isn't a whole thing on like originations, but
right.
to kind of set some of the groundwork, we'll rewind the tapes a
Love
little
it.
bit.
Love it.
So Holly and I met when we were young, early 20s. I was early, she would have been early 20s also, maybe 19, but she was sophomore in college. And we met because her younger brother Tyler, who was on our podcast a couple episodes back, was dating my younger sister Nikki.
I forgot about.
Yeah, so they went to high school together. They were dating. They'd been dating about a month. It was right around Thanksgiving time. They'd been dating a month, and the Reedy family always did a huge Thanksgiving celebration.
Right.
Always.
And they were awesome.
And always invited anybody and everybody.
Yeah.
Like, it was
like 40 people there.
Yeah,
Kind of a thing.
like-
yeah.
neighbors, friends, stranger that they met that afternoon that didn't have a place to go, like, not exaggerating. They got invited.
Yeah, and they ended up being great people, but you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And so that's just what the thing was. I didn't know that. I know that now.
Right.
But at the time, I didn't know that. So they'd been dating about a month, and it was Thanksgiving time. And my mom told me, it's like, hey, we're going over to your sister's boyfriend's house for Thanksgiving dessert. And I'm like,
the whole time you're like, my sister's boyfriend.
like,
And they've
my
only been
sister's
dating like a
boyfriend?
month?
Like a month. Like, I'm not even sure a month.
That's pretty wild, actually.
Yeah. And I'm like, it's Thanksgiving. Like, my family our Thanksgiving wasn't private by any means, but it was always just family.
Right.
And so I was like, what? No. Like, I don't have any interest in going to my sister's boyfriend's family's house for Thanksgiving dinner. Not dinner, but dessert. Like, this is stupid.
And you were like 22 at the time, right?
Yeah,
Something
21,
like that.
22. This would have been, it'd have been 20, maybe just turned 22. It was 2001.
And at that point, you're barely interested to go back to the family dinner. You know what I mean? Let alone go over to somebody else's house. You're like, okay.
And mom drops well, your grandparents are going. And I was like, what? Why? Why is that?
How?
How? Why are my grandparents going? And she's like, well, they're all over with us, and they invited us, so that's what we're doing. And I'm like, fine, whatever. So I begrudgingly go to the Reedy's house for Thanksgiving dessert.
And you had never even known about Holly at this point?
No.
Never met her, never heard about her? Okay.
No, I knew nothing other than such a small piece of Tyler that I even had exposure to. Like,
Right.
I didn't know, other than his name, I'm not even sure I had met him.
I would have thought him and Nikki would have made a good match. Anyway, that's a side note.
That's a side note. And so we go over there, and the moment where like the light bulb went off is Holly. The whole Reedy family's musical.
Very much so.
And our performers.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about a stage and all about performing.
Well, we just had, I think we talked about it a little bit. We just had a family reunion type of a deal, and the four siblings put on a full, like 2 different performances. Unbelievable.
And
nailed it.
incredibly well done.
Like choreo was on point.
I'm
Anyway.
like, really?
Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah. Anyways, so we go over, and everything's a production with the family.
Mm-hmm.
We have some dessert, and afterwards, Susie, Holly's mom, asked her to grab her guitar and play a song for everybody. So she grabs a stool, grabs her guitar, and just plays a song and was singing, and everybody was just kind of sitting around like a private show kind of type environment. And my mom leans over and in a very loud type of way goes, "She's pretty cute." And loud enough that everybody like noticed. like, who said that? It was like, and what do you do? It's like, yeah, she is. And the rest is history. I mean,
to this day, your mom and Holly really have an affinity for one another. I mean, they really gel incredibly well together.
Yeah, the rest is history. She was home from on Thanksgiving break from college, and I made the most brutal ask out ever when she came back for Christmas break.
Okay, unpack that.
Yeah. So there was Tyler and Nikki broke up like after a month. So they broke up like, I don't know, I think it was before Christmas. So it was like this short window,
right,
that I had talk about divine intervention, that I had an opportunity to be introduced to this family. And so I knew Holly was coming back for Christmas break. And so I picked up the phone, and I was just like, hey, this is Luke. You want to grab coffee? Like, that was all I said.
I mean, not a bad start.
But she doesn't drink coffee. She doesn't like coffee. She can't even stand the way it smells.
Oh, bad start.
Yeah. And I didn't know that. And of course, she's
so gracious. And
She's her mom was evidently, I found out her mom was in the background going, "Go, like, just go." She's like, "I don't want to go with this guy." Like, I was not her type.
Well, more than anything, she just didn't know you that well either, right? She had just met you and all that too. So.
Well, yeah, but I was not her type. That was the punchline of that moment.
If it makes you feel any better, I wasn't Brooke's type either.
I wasn't her type. And I know as you all look at me, you go, "How's that possible?" But I wasn't.
Easy, big shifter.
And next episode will be on pride. But I wasn't her type. And her mom essentially didn't force her, but really encouraged her, like, it's one date, just go. And so we scheduled to go to a Starbucks, and I don't know if you know this, but Holly took Brooke as her out. So she dropped Brooke off at the gym and was like, "Look, I'll be back in an hour to pick you up," or whatever time frame they put down there. And that way I have an out that I got to go get my sister. We ended up sitting at Starbucks and talking for 3 hours. She forgot about Brooke. The gym closed, and Brooke was sitting on the sidewalk under the street lamp for like an hour,
probably
waiting for,
pissed.
because this was pre-cell phone, but that family didn't really do cell phones.
Right.
And so she was just sitting there waiting for Holly to show up. So
I didn't know about that part of the story.
Yeah.
And then the rest is history.
Yeah, the rest is history. I fell in love fast.
And she was at Western Washington University playing soccer. And then I know there's a lot of history behind that transition. Her coming back
I mean,
home
there's
and all
so
that.
many things that could be unpacked, and I think it just depends on where we want to go with it. But I fell in love super fast. She did not. She broke up with me between our first date and us actually getting engaged like 4 or 5 times.
Then what was getting it back? Was it just you persisting, or was it just circumstantial?
I hesitate because it sounds like such a dick move, but here's honest to God, here's what I did. She would break up with me, and it would be like, look, I just can't do this anymore. Like this, I'm just not. This isn't a good vibe for me. And every time I went, that's fine, it's okay, you'll be back. And I would let it be.
And then she would come
she
back.
Would call me.
Wow, that's almost like a subliminal message. Like you just kind of dropped.
I'm not promoting that as a path for a healthy relationship, but I just had. Honestly, part of it was arrogance and being in your early 20s, and I was a very arrogant 20-year-old. But part of it was I just knew also. Like I had
a confidence.
I had this sense. I was like, you're the one I'm going to marry. Like, take your time. I'll be here.
It's more or less take the time you need.
It didn't come out communicated that kindly. It came out very arrogantly. Because you're posturing too.
Right.
And I wasn't mature enough to have that level of like communication skills that came off like I said it. But it in my heart, it was like, we'll be back together. Like, take the time that you need.
Right.
And
you said you fell in love fast. What does that mean? What does that look like? What caused that to happen?
Yeah. So let's pivot for a second. Let's talk about choosing a spouse.
Okay, because that was kind of the initial conversation we had. Was
what does that look like? What does that look like? And I think as we date, part of it is this a good long-term fit? Like that's part of it's fun. Part of it's just companionship and someone to go to the movies with, and but part of that lens is, does this work?
Right.
Is this somebody that I could spend the rest of my life with? If so, why? And what are those things? And if not, why? And what are those things?
Right.
And so I had a handful of semi-serious relationships to that point, and I had genuinely created a list, like I had written it out.
Like the characteristics you're looking for in a wife.
Yeah, I had written it out, and I was like, the perfect spouse for me, if that perfect person is out there, and I made a list of, I wish I still had that list, and maybe I do somewhere. There's no way I could find it, but it was probably 50, 100 items of like character traits and, humor and beauty and honesty and integrity and like all the different, good family and like all the different things, right?
Was it just generalized or non-negotiables? Like it has to check these boxes.
I put it down from a this is what I'm looking for standpoint. I didn't know if it was realistic.
Got it.
So while that was my like manifestation of like this is what I'm in search for, I was still young and I probably hadn't reached a spot where I was like, man, is this person out there? Like this was just an ongoing like creation of things that I would put together as I would break up with someone and I'd be like, oh wow, that person was really clingy, codependent. I didn't like that. Let's write that down.
Wow,
right?
That's pretty thoughtful for a young man to go through to exercise. I wouldn't even have thought of that.
I was coached, actually.
Interesting. Okay.
That was part of like my not necessarily my parents, but kind of my parents' sphere and circle, and being a part of the business and motivation and lifestyle manifestation world that they were in, kind of helped me with that. But I had created this list. So when I met Holly, it was like breathing for the first time. It was oxygen. It was something I had never experienced.
Just her perspective on life, the way she carried herself, both.
Yes. The perspective on life aligned with mine. the way she carried herself and her lens of the world is what was so refreshing. It was
And the way she treats people, she really like makes she has that special characteristic that Duffy had in making you feel like you're the only person she's talking to, right? Oftentimes when you talk to someone, you're like, are you even listening to me?
Yeah.
She really makes you feel like she's listening. It's
Yeah.
pretty special.
And she just had this levity to her. Generally speaking, I'm a pretty serious person to a fault. And I've worked on that, and I effort to not be that. I'm overly intellectual. I overthink things. I am steeped in too much reality sometimes, and I get real serious. And it was the opposite of that. Not
Right.
that she lives a fantasy land, but almost kind of.
Right.
Like it was this, like, you're not based in reality at all, and I am captivated. Like, what is this?
Yeah,
It was fun, and it was light, and it was uplifting, and it was like she was gorgeous and came from a good family and all the things, like literally
Every box.
every box. And I was like, I will not let you go. I will not let you go. And I had to earn it, I think, is why she didn't fall in love with me, because I wasn't her type. Like, I wasn't what she
Right.
was necessarily looking for, or what she thought she was looking for.
That's the bigger one, right?
Yeah.
I think we all create a persona in
Yeah.
our head of what that ideal candidate looks like. But at the end of the day, like we talked about with your journey, of course she ended up with you.
Yeah.
You're exactly who she needed.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's the
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, because I bring an element of reality to her life that she needs.
And we talked about the contrast between Brooke and you and me and Holly. Same thing.
Yeah.
Holding feet to the ground. Like, sure, we can do this, but we also need to do this thoughtfully.
Yeah, because I am for Holly kind of what Brooke is for you.
100%.
Yeah.
You better believe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've talked about Republicans and Democrats. You need both.
You gotta have
need
both.
the person that's like, everything's possible, let's go. And the person that's like, yeah, but you need to also think through shit. Like, you can't just run into the wall every time. That's
Totally.
not good. So,
Totally.
yeah.
So that's kind of the broad strokes there, and we can go wherever we want with that. But before we do,
Yeah.
your turn.
Yeah, Brooke and I's, again, longer story there, but I'll give you the condensed version. We met when I was really young, actually. For the blind date scenario, so to speak. I was 22 or 23, and she was 21 or 22. I can't remember. But it was back in 2008, and my sister's husband's sister worked with her at Jean Juarez. So that's a lot of...
Sister's husband.
Anyway, there was a
sister.
family connection that worked with her at Jean Juarez hair studio. And she's got a great personality too, but she said, hey, I think Brooke has an incredible personality. I think you should meet her. I hadn't seen what she looked like. I didn't have Facebook at the time or anything like that. That actually drove her nuts because she couldn't see me. She couldn't figure out what I looked like. She actually she thought I sounded like a thug on the phone. I'm not sure why, but I guess I have that smooth operator sound. And so I think she had this idea what I looked like, but we talked a couple times on the phone. Things weren't transpiring, and I was ready to give up. And I told Jen, who set us up, I was like, "This isn't working. I'm going to move on." And she said, "No, you need to meet. Please do it." And so I ended up randomly the next day. I got free Mariners tickets from my uncle. He had season tickets, and so he said, "Hey, if you want to go do it." He also had parking garage tickets as well. I say that because I worked in the Soto district. The Soto district is just south of the stadiums in Seattle. Pretty rough area. A little bit better now, but it's pretty rough. A lot of homelessness, a lot of trafficking, all sorts of stuff down there. I worked for a hardwood flooring company down there, and so it was kind of the industrial area. Well, anyway, I had her come pick me up there and left my car there because I didn't want her to leave hers, right? Because
Okay.
it's kind of a sketchy area, and I would rather her park in the parking garage. But rather lame to have your first blind date, have the girl come pick you up at work.
Sure.
But I did. And the first thing I said to her, I was wearing light wash jeans and I don't know, like a turd. And I opened the door up and I said, "What you see is what you get." And that was, she was like, "Okay, here we go." Got a good chuckle out of it, but man, I got to tell you, this is going to sound bad, and I apologize if this comes across the wrong way, but I'm just find males funnier. I just do. I find men funnier for whatever reason. Maybe it's a relatability thing. But she made me laugh so freaking hard during that baseball game. I mean, I instantly fell in love. I was like, no woman has made me laugh like this, you know?
Interesting.
You've heard her split pea soup story, I'm
Sure.
sure, which is freaking hilarious. But she told that story, and I mean, I'm like on the ground at the stadium just dying. And I'd say 2 weeks in, I told her I loved her. And
Wow.
she didn't. She was like, what? This is crazy. But about a month later after that, she finally told me she loved me. We have a bit of a storied past in that, obviously, you guys know a bit about my addiction stuff. But she walked through that with me in a lot of ways. Gave me a lot of space to walk through that on my own, 6-month period. But then we started dating each other again. And, you know, I didn't do what you did. I didn't make a list, kind of had more of a qualitative idea in my mind of who I was looking for. But I'm such a feeler, you know, I'm such a gut guy that when
That's such a picture of you and me, though.
Yeah.
Like, I'm very like, let's go about it like this.
Yes.
And you're like, let's just do it.
Feels right. But I also believe, and maybe it's just in my own head, that it's a gift from God. I believe intuition is, and I've really, I feel like I've exercised my intuition enough to feel like I got a pretty good sense of what's right and what's wrong. And there's always going to be outliers there, but she just checked all the boxes in that way, right? She checked the heart box, which sounds cheesy, I know, but she did. And for me, that's all that mattered. And I can't say it enough. I ended up with, I'm the luckiest man alive. I ended up with the best possible person for me to be with, period.
Yeah.
And she makes me better. She pushes me. She is nurturing. She is a credible mom to our kids. She prioritizes us on a regular basis. I just couldn't ask for anything better in a wife.
I love it.
And so I feel incredibly grateful for that. Obviously more there too, and we can unpack more as we go, but that's how it all kind of came to be. And we both have benefited greatly from being a part of that family.
Wow.
In a big way. So in terms of anyone out there that might not be married, might be discouraged, 51% of our population is single. I don't know if you knew that. I looked it up because I was thinking about someone I
had no idea.
Feeling bad about, right? Just going, man, I wonder what it's like to be single. You know, how many people out there are single? In America, 51% are single.
That's a interesting statistic. 51%. What do you think about? And I know the answer for you and I, but I see people make interesting spouse decisions. Okay, to just put it mildly.
Right.
How does somebody balance this fear that they're going to be alone, which I think is why total speculation, which is why they make questionable spouse decisions, with the, not settling and waiting for that person, like, you and I early, to be in our early 20s, really, in today's day and age, and to know who we're going to marry, that's pretty uncommon now.
Right.
A lot of people are waiting till their late 20s, early 30s, getting married, which is kind of a dichotomy shift, generationally.
Really decade postponement.
Yeah. Like, how do you balance that fear of being alone with, like, not settling?
I think there's so many layers to it and so many case by case, meaning, like, for example, if someone's an overthinker versus a feeler, right? A feeler, someone like me, might be more willing to go, let's go on a date, let's take it to the next level, let's go on. But an overthinker might have a great candidate in front of them and just constantly be thinking, well, what about that? What about that? What if they say this? What if I do that? And that in and of itself can just get in the way of relationships, period. But if we think about it on a baseline level, like, there are none of those personality traits that can get in the way. I'd say there's a little bit of both that need to occur at the same time, right? Meaning, yes, you need to commit to the person that you've decided to commit to in that season of life, you decided to commit to that person because guess what? Whether you know it or not, you and that person are going to evolve and change over that 10 to 15 year period, next 10 to 15 year period, and then again over the next 10 to 15 year period. And so I think there's a little bit of committing to the person you've married, but also evolving with that person and evolving your marriage through those changes together, and being committed to that, and being okay and understanding that this person 15 years later, nobody thinks about these things, but 15 years later, it's going to look different, right? It might even sound different, might have gone through a lot of different things. Maybe your wife has had 4 children like mine has, and has gone through a lot of physical bodily changes that will affect your marriage, right? And so maybe not necessarily negative or negatively, but it will.
But maybe.
Sure, but it will affect your marriage just simply in the way she feels every day, and goes about her day. And how you have to support her in that. So I think it goes back to what your dad said a long time ago. I think you make your decision and then you continue to make it right.
Yeah.
I
think that something that you hear is like, well, you're not the same person I married.
Of course.
Duh.
Right.
Right. And I think that the expectation that this is going to be the same version that you marry on day 0 is going to be on day 10,000. Like, no, like 5 years in, no. And like the hardest period of time for most people is that 7 years, like 6, 7, 8 years of getting through that. Like the newness is worn off. You've seen everybody. You've seen all the warts. You've seen enough.
Right.
What continues to surprise me, being 19 years in, is still how much I don't know about Holly. Like, still figuring things out, still learning, either because it's evolving,
right?
Because I'm evolving and going and learning and looking at things different and having different perspectives. She's evolving and
right.
different, or it just takes that much time to learn.
Right.
But it's like, I'm still looking for how can I do it better, and how can I serve you better, and how can I love you and support you better. And I feel like that's non-stop.
And I'd argue too, as we sit here and stew over our lack of clarity, right? Our lack of vision for the future, and like, man, we could get it right in front of us. You know what I mean? Like, we don't need utmost clarity to serve our wives better and love them better, and just be for them and be there for them in different ways than maybe we haven't shown up before. Like, that's all very doable, and it doesn't need clarity. And it doesn't need,
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be overthought either.
How are you going to talk your kids through spouse selection as you think about what you did, how it felt, timelines, coming back to the being alone versus being patient? How are you going to talk to your kids about this stuff?
Well, first, I think for me, the foundation is going to be golden rule. I know that sounds too easy, but really, right? Your spouse better be treating you the way that you're treating them, right? Period. It needs to be reciprocated. If that relationship doesn't feel like a two-way street, get out of it, right? Toxic relationships are the worst possible thing you can be a part of. And so the other thing too is make it really clear that love, true love, in my opinion, is not loving someone who's lovable. It's loving someone when they're unlovable, right? Being able to look at that person and go, when you're in your worst place, you are awful to be around. Can I still love you? Can I still lean in and care for you and do whatever I can to make sure you're okay? And if that's true, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
It's a good sign that that's somebody you should lean into. But I'd argue most people would say, no, that's not somebody I want to continue loving. I know that sounds bad, but I just read a quote by Theo Vaughn, really funny guy. I don't know if you
hilarious.
Listen to him, but he said, sometimes you got to give up on people, and not because you don't care, but because they don't, And so you gotta have some foundational awareness of what a healthy relationship is. And, hopefully I show them.
Yeah.
I don't tell them. I don't even have to, right? That they can see the way I'm squeezing their mom's tush as she's walking by because I want to, because it's hot. But those little types of things, it might seem insignificant, but they see it. They notice it, and they understand, like, and they see the reaction mom gets from it, and her feeling loved and her feeling seen and noticed and so important. But like all parents, I think we're all going to just rest on, I want you to choose the person you feel the best about. Like I could tell you all these baselines and all these characteristics I'm looking for, but it's you and what matters to you. And that is going to be challenging as a parent, I think, because I want to jump in and I want them to adhere to what I think is important for them. And at that point, it's not up to us. It's not.
Yeah. I think the base note of it all has to be that they have to be okay with themselves first. That they have to be confident in who they are, in what they are, and okay in the silence, okay in the crowd, and that they are comfortable with themselves.
How will they know? Like if they go, okay, Dad, how do I know? How do I know I'm okay?
I think it's an internal knowing. I'm not sure that's something that can necessarily, and maybe if I thought about it long enough, I could articulate it, but I'm not sure I can articulate it in this moment. I think what we do as parents is we try and create environments where we limit codependency.
So in other words, if you're feeling any instability, don't go attach yourself to somebody else hoping that they'll make you stable.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to be confident in yourself and standing on your own 2 feet first and foremost, because then you're making the decision for what completes you and what your heart's saying, not out of fear. Making the decision out of love, not fear. Right.
Right.
If you're making this decision to date this person, to marry this person out of fear, red flag.
Big time.
Ejection. If you're making it out of, I can't imagine not being with this person, that's why you're doing it.
Right.
But it's got to start with self. It's got to start with self and being confident in themselves. And then I think what you said is 100% on modeling.
Yeah.
Like, what does that look like? The good and the bad. And
Right.
not hiding the bad.
Right.
Not hiding the arguments. Does it make my kids uncomfortable when we're arguing in the car? Mm-hmm. Do they ask us to stop? Mm-hmm. Because they're uncomfortable. Because they're afraid watching their kids, their friends at school, parents get divorced. They're afraid that because we're arguing, they're going to get divorced, that we're going to get divorced.
Right.
And they need to see that you can argue and still not get divorced.
And
they
work
need to see
through it.
that.
Yeah.
And so modeling it, you know, showing them what, physicality looks like, communication looks like, negative stuff looks like, yeah.
How will you help them recognize manipulation versus true love, true care, compassion? Because sometimes those things they get a little cloudy. Like, what is happening here?
Yeah. I think it comes down to leverage. I think it comes down to looking in the rearview mirror, and was that act of service, love, care, compassion that you experienced from the other person leveraged for something else?
Makes sense.
Did they use it later to be like, I did that for you Saturday? Wait
trying
a second.
to get something from you versus.
Wait a second.
Yep.
Right. And we're all guilty of that, but is there a pattern of that? That's
Right.
what I mean.
Yeah. Right.
Like, we all have some element of a little tit for tat. Like, I'm not saying that that's necessarily in and of itself the thing, but if it's ongoing, consistent, clearly if it's destructive, right? But,
Right.
is there an ulterior motive to that looking backwards? Because you don't see it looking out the windshield.
Right.
You only see it in the rearview mirror. And so, time, it takes time, dating,
Mm-hmm.
Going through hard things, dating, I think
Right.
is important.
Right.
Going through, for example, Holly and I, not only did we do the long distance thing, she was at Western on the other side of the state than I was. Not only did we do a long distance thing, her living in Australia for 6 months while me being in the States, those things add complexity to it. Can you make it through those things? Does it still work? But when I asked Holly's dad if I could marry her, he told me no. That's a hard thing.
Yeah.
Do you work through those things? Can you work through those things? Working through challenges while in a dating environment, I think is good. Now, it shouldn't all be challenges.
Right.
But having a few things that's like, well, this is going to be interesting to see how this one turns out.
Right.
I think that's when you apply a little pressure and you see
Right.
what comes out. And so all those things, just time.
Yeah.
Time.
And I wonder too if it creates that much more importance for belief systems to align, right?
Yeah.
Because even if you get caught up in a challenge, at least you have some direction, some guidance to get back to maybe not normalcy, but back to a center point of like, okay, like we can work from here, we can grow from here. Belief systems are really important, and I also tell my children, do your best, not very hard to do, but do your best to try to connect with your future spouse or whoever you're dating intellectually and spiritually before you do emotionally. I think if you can master that, you're going to just have healthier relationships to begin with, because even if that relationship doesn't turn into a romantic one, so what? You can still benefit from a great intellectual relationship, a platonic one. Just because something didn't work out on the dating scene, like it's funny that we just write relationships off because it didn't align with what our expectation was. If you start with intellectual and spiritual, you'll make great connections no matter what.
Yeah. Intellectual, spiritual, then emotional,
Yeah.
then physical.
Correct. Yep.
And I think we get it backwards. We lead with the physical, and I get it. It's
We're-
hot.
And we're social.
We're built that way. Like, no judgment, but we can't base our decisions on those things as like, well, the sex was hot. So
Right.
it's like, okay, but that's
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking with one
It's not
head,
a beauty
the other.
contest.
I mean, it sounds bad, but it's true.
yeah.
And it's not, but in the physical aspect, for sure, I'm still going to lean some importance on,
Yeah.
meaning like there needs to be a strong attraction, but we've talked about delayed gratification a lot. And we do want to maybe even get a episode around that to some degree, but it's along those lines. It's along the lines of saying, hey, I'm going to delay that, or I'm going to deny myself that satisfaction because I know that there's so much more importance in building a foundational relationship intellectually and spiritually, so that all of this is so much better.
Well, here's the challenge if you don't do those things first. And I experienced this in some of my relationships. When you lead with the physical, it's so chemically and internally arresting that it's tough to see and even find out if you connect in those other ways. It's tough to go back and
Totally.
connect intellectually and spiritually and emotionally after you are connecting physically. Because one, you don't see the same flags.
You're convincing yourself of
Because
things.
it's like, that's not that big of a deal.
Right.
Okay, so you're not, and two, you almost don't leave room for it.
Right.
Connecting physically is fun. I get it, and it can take over a relationship though, and if you don't have the other foundational things, because physicality throughout your marriage will ebb and flow
Correct.
significantly.
Yep. And that's due to hormonal change, all sorts of stuff going on. It's not just choice.
There will be seasons where the sex isn't hot, and
Right.
it's hard, and it's difficult, and maybe it's non-existent.
Right.
The whole joke is I'm married now, I don't get to have sex. I don't believe that's true, but I do believe there are moments where that's true
Sure.
because it's not working.
Bodies are changing.
And
all
if
sorts
you
of
don't
stuff.
have everything else in alignment, the one thing that you had is gone.
Right.
Like, that's
Yeah.
not going to work.
It's the same thing for working for money, right? If all you're do is working for money, the moment you retire, you have nothing else to live for.
Yeah.
Well, if sex goes away, you don't have a marriage.
Right.
It's not good.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you got to start. And I think Holly and I, looking backwards, had an advantage there because she was at Western.
Right.
So we had to start on the phone.
Right. Right.
the majority of our first, till summer, the majority of our first 4 or 5 months was on the phone.
It's pretty impressive, actually. Long distance relationships are tough. I've been a part of one. They're not easy.
We connected, and I said that she was oxygen. The reason why I captivated her and we went forward is she had never met somebody like me. So while I hadn't necessarily been in her box of like her type, the way I talked about life, the way I talked about what I was going to accomplish, what I was going to go and do in this world, the impact I was going to have, she'd never met anybody like that. So there was an intellectual wait a second. Well,
and you came from a family that was doing it too.
Yeah, you're not like the boys at college. The boys at college are there to sleep around, party, go to, have
21,
fun.
That's pretty rare.
It's like you're cut differently. And I captivated her in that capacity. That's why it worked early.
Right.
And the intellectual side worked. But yeah, we built that early because we had to. It was out of necessity.
Let me ask you a harder question. How do you think you're perceived as a spouse? By your spouse, not by others.
Oh,
sorry, that was a harder question. It's a harder one for me to answer too.
How am I perceived? I am perceived as stable, predictable, maybe a little annoyable.
Agitated?
Yeah, I get irritated easy. Those are the negative sides. I'm committed to growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is one of my secret superpowers, is that I am not standing still.
Mm-hmm.
From an internal perspective, from a just who I am and how I present myself to the world. So I'm committed to growth and always being better. I'm very supportive, but I have this trait of trying to coach everybody through things. And
maybe sometimes it doesn't feel supportive.
That's not helpful.
Grab the shovel. Don't ask me questions.
It's like, I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling that way. And I'm like, perfect, let's solve this.
Right.
And that's not.
Right. It's more or less just put your arm around me and hug me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those things, my dad's a solver.
Right.
And so, coming back to legacy and environment, that's kind of what I witnessed. I started out our marriage being what I perceived as the version of my dad. Right? Because
he had no nurturement at all.
And he had no nurturement. So he moved the dial significantly.
Big time for your family.
And so I then, was like, this is the gold standard. And I love my dad. And they have an incredible marriage. And yet there's still things that I look at my dad and go, come on, help mom out. Do this, do that.
Sure.
And that's because of my growth.
Right.
That's because of things that I have chosen to move the dial on.
Right.
It's not right or wrong. And so, but the version that I was early in our marriage would have led to divorce for us. And so who I am now, I hope would be defined as supportive, loving, protective, watching the blind spots. I'm a strategy 50,000 foot guy, and I try and take that type of approach with my family, and just kind of while still being nurturing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Those are some of the few things that you just kind of go, maybe this, maybe some of this, and trying to not be overly let me tell you how great I am. But
there's one thing that's a generalized term that I want to give you this title, because I think it's the best title you can get as a leader of a family, is leader. Is leader. Everything you just said is summed up in that one word.
And I think that's fair.
Leader. I think your family looks at you and goes, he is our leader.
Yeah, I do. We make the decisions together, but I do make the decisions.
She does it. I know. I really watch that. And I really respect that about Holly and your guys' marriage. She does a good job of inserting her thoughts and ideas and opinions, but allowing you to navigate leadership around those discussions. It's really cool, actually.
Well, something I've had to learn, and again, coming back to 19 years and still learning, I would say this is probably the last 2, 3, 4 years of learning for me that I've picked up on this, is to trust my wife's intuition. And so while I say I make the decisions, if she comes to me and says, I can't articulate this, but
That's the gift. I'm telling you, there's that side of it. That's a gift. Your gut tells you,
Yeah.
You can't even put it into intellectual terms.
And the other side of this, like, I know, Luke, you're freaking out about this. That's fine.
Yeah. It's
That's
going to be
fine.
okay.
And I put stock in that.
Yeah.
Like, I will buy all day long.
Yeah. That's cool.
And because she's so in tune with her intuition, what resonates, what feels right. Like, I may cast the final vote, but she's 90% of the sway.
Yeah.
And she's just so gifted in being in touch with what the Lord, the universe, the environment, what is being communicated. She's incredibly gifted.
And opposites attract for a reason, I mean, in a lot of ways, alignment is all over the place in both of our marriages, but we are opposites characteristically because we need it. We need one another. We need each other to fill those gaps for the marriage, for the family,
Yeah, when people say, gosh, we're just so alike, I'm like,
You're going to get bored.
let's define that.
Yeah.
Let's define that, because the opposites sharpen each other. There has to be loads of commonalities, right? You have to have similar worldviews, similar, I'm not sure you necessarily have to have similar political views. It certainly helps. Creates a lot of friction if you don't.
I've watched it happen
Yep.
in marriages.
Yep. You have to have similar child rearing views. You have to have similar economic view. Like, you have to have those things. But from a personality characteristics, that's where the opposites need to be there, like, to balance each other out. Partnership is really what it is. And if we think about it in terms of business partnerships only work if roles are clearly defined, you're not stepping on each other's toes, and what you do is vital to the execution of the business, and what the other person does is vital to the execution of the business, and it doesn't cross over, and you can't do the other person's job.
Can't have the same superpower.
You cannot.
Nope.
So if you both have the same superpower, my experience, your mileage may vary, my experience would say pump the brakes.
Because you're going to end up eventually competing against one another because you're fighting for the same thing, same spot, same ideas. You start feeling devalued if your ideas aren't at the top. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, And so two great salesmen should probably stay in their lane,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
But when you find that opposite, like you got your Claudia, I have my Steph. Wow. When you find that person that just does that side well and just excels in it and gives you the bandwidth and the freedom and the runway, and our wives do this for us too. I named assistants, but our wives give us that same exact bandwidth to be our best selves.
Those are our business assistants, by the way.
Whoa.
Wow, all of a sudden you started tossing in other female names. What's this? When you find your Stephanie, and it's like, wait a second, where'd Stephanie come from?
We jump back into business. Let's just make that very clear.
Let's be super clear here.
But just in general, when you have somebody else step in your life that can fill the gaps that you can't, everything gets better. Everything runs smoother, just how it goes.
I mean, I have been so immensely blessed by my wife, and she has been foundational in the version of myself that I am today. Luke 20.0. Because I'm so many different versions past.
Working on 21.0.
Yeah, that's right. I am too. Like, It was 20 Lukes ago we got married. I mean, she is a gift not just to the world around her, the people she interacts with, her friends, her neighbors, the disenfranchised, but to our family, to my kids, to me. Like, I cannot imagine pursuing this life without her. Like, she is magic.
It's going to be a Mother's Day clip for next year.
She is absolutely pure magic. And
what a wonderful thing to say about your wife.
And I've heard it said a million different ways. Like, you know, I outpunted my coverage. I'm punching above my weight class. I married up. Like, yes, all those things. There isn't a euphemism you could come up with that is grand enough to be like, I don't know how I landed where I did, but God was watching out for me, and she is perfect match for me.
Well said. And Brooke, you know this, I tell you all the time, but you make everything about me and our life and our family better every day. And I'm incredibly grateful for you. And the last thing I'd want to say is I'm grateful for Duffy and Susie. And I'm grateful for their parents.
Yeah.
Because even learning about their parents and our spouse's grandparents, they left a wonderful legacy and had wonderful marriages. And I'm just grateful that we get to enjoy that legacy. We get to pass that legacy down to our kids. That I came from a broken family. My parents got divorced. Still really good co-parenting and raised us up the right way. But just to have contiguous marital relationships throughout our family that are really healthy and really life-giving, for my kids to grow up around that in that environment, it's just beyond a gift. I'm really grateful.
I don't know how we did it, man, but I look around at all of our friends and all the people, and I just somehow we hit the frickin' lotto.
We did, yeah. I remember Darius Rucker asking a musician, "What's your big dream?" And he said, "I stopped dreaming a long time ago." And he said, "Why?" He said, "I'm living it." I love that. I feel that way a lot of the time. I feel like I'm living it. I feel like I'm losing my ability to cast vision. I mean, I still get little glimmers of it. I used to have it strong, but I think it's because I'm living my ultimate vision right now. Like I'm in it right now, and I don't need clarity for a bigger life. I'm in a big life, you know? And so sure, we're always going to be pursuing a better version of ourselves. We want big lives. We want to continue blessing our families in big ways. But it's also really healthy to take a moment and take stock of what you have and what you've created and what you've accomplished, and just be really grateful for it.
Man. Yeah. I don't know what to add. Not that I need to add anything. I'm humbled and blessed. And I'm very grateful.
Awesome. Appreciate you, man.
Love you.
Love you. We're out.
See ya.
Thank you for tuning in to Processing Purpose. We hope you grabbed a few golden nuggets to take one step forward in your journey of life and business. Please remember to like and subscribe our channel if you'd like to get more content to help you build and grow everything around you. Make today your best day. Today is day one.